Pulling up hour number 2, Woodward Sports Network. Neil Rule, Darren McCarty back in the fold. Happy to have you all with us as well. KG, intern Justin, Spencer Raxter also. But right now, as we are every Tuesday, we're joined by the Woodward Sports Injury Insider. That is right, Dr. Jeff Pierce, the medical director of the Michigan Sports and Spine Center. You can hear him here Tuesdays on Big D Energy, Thursdays with Ermanni and Edwards, and his appearance brought to you by Amon-Ra of Southfield, featuring the most advanced imaging and maximum patient comfort for over 20 years. Amon-Ra of Southfield.com. Dr. Pierce, appreciate your time. And look, I thought of you right away. When it's becoming that way, I guess. No, but I thought of you right away. Tigers announced that Kerry Carpenter was going to the disabled list, and when I heard it initially, I thought, okay, you know, maybe it's something that was going on. But then they kind of amended what they said: a lumbar spine stress fracture in his lower back. And Dr. Pierce, I was like, is it over? Like, because that sounds awful.
I mean, it does sound awful. So when people hear fracture, it's like a whole different degree, right? Like, it went from inflammation to a strain to a fracture, and that's imaging. So to understand the low back, there's 5 segments of the low back, right? We go L1. Everybody thinks it's L1. Stands for lumbar, which you've already mentioned. So what goes on is there's multiple areas of we call joints or facets, or areas where everything moves together. Okay, so if he has a stress fracture, which people have, like, you hear about spondies, right? Spondee means a shifting of the bones. Is it just a shifting? Is it a fracture that creates the shifting? So there's a lot to it. When you say stress fracture, I'm thinking a 26-year-old kid with no trauma, nothing else going on. I'm not thinking it's going to be something severe. Definitely not career ending. It's that whole rest and see, which is the bad part of the recovery. There's not, like, you know, we don't have a secret sauce to make it heal better. It's still bone that needs to heal. So there's that physiology of it, right? We talk about fractures need 6 months to truly heal. We've talked about that before. In this case, it's not really the full 6 months. If he has a stress fracture, which I'm assuming is a non-displaced fracture, because they would have said that, which is more minimal. If you have a displaced fracture, now you're more involved, you're more concerned. That's like, you know, are we going to put him in a solid brace? When I talked about my hockey player for Cranbrook that stood on his head to win the state championship, he had something similar. And it got worse and worse and worse because it wasn't addressed. We had to put him in a rigid brace. So we'll see if Carpenter gets into a rigid brace. It'd probably be the most aggressive, conservative thing to do. But at this point, it's probably recommended that he get, like, it's literally like a casting brace for him.
D-Mac.
What is the obviously we're just speculating because we don't know, right? Exactly. Right. Is this something that, like, rest, relaxation, or is the worst thing? What happens if we hear he's got to go under the knife? What does that mean? This isn't
something, well, I doubt it, because it would be more than that. A little stress fracture we allow to heal.
Okay.
Sometimes we use some of the biologics to speed that healing up. There's talk about, again, the secret sauce of the peptides and the exosomes, which are proving to increase the healing rates on these things. I don't know where the Tigers doctors are at with those kind of philosophies, because it's still considered outside the norm. And it's a gray area right now. A lot of people, like, I just, you know, not to switch subjects, but I just got a call from California with one of the Hollywood insiders, and that's exactly what we were talking about. He had a thing with his neck. We're now treating him with this secret sauce that will advance him to, you know, he's filming. You know, these guys have a different play day, right? He's got to film for 4 weeks straight. 12 to 20 hours a day.
The money's already tied up. The studios are rented. Right. All the equipment, everything. The job's got to get done.
Yeah, you can't tell me your neck hurts today. I don't have another man up to fill you in.
Right.
So it's kind of like a different, like, you think of these guys like, oh, we'll just take a day off, you know, things like that. But getting back to Carpenter, I mean, more will show up in the next couple days, couple weeks. But it's like imaging, like, you know, we talked about MRI. You know, that's really where it comes down to. And for people that don't have a Tigers, you know, not shifting to MRI Southfield, but they're there's places that are out there that won't pick up stress fractures because it's not slicing as many times. Sometimes when you hear, I'm getting a quick image or I'm getting something like that, it's not as good. You know, being an everyday person, you might be missing stress fractures like this because you're getting poor imaging. I just had a beef with one of the insurance companies that I have a sports hernia.
Oh, that's a shocker.
Yeah. And I'm really, because I wanted to get this out. I actually tracked this myself. But, you know, I'm dealing with a guy with a 4-year history of an injury that's been missed, and he's irritating it. And it's a pseudo sports hernia. So I'm ordering a very detailed type of MRI with multiple slices to see it. And then the insurance company is telling me they denied it and they ordered a CT scan. The CT scan will tell you absolutely nothing, right? Actually, in a fracture, it'll tell you a little bit more. But an MRI in that case, so it'll come back that the CT is normal. I'm sorry, I'm going off on this.
No.
The CT is normal, and then they're going to tell me there's nothing wrong with him, and then he's going to continue on. So it's the insurance company who's dictating a little bit too much these days. You know, at least respect my, 25 plus years
in the game,
of intelligence, and I'll fight for that patient. But like other people out in the world, our listeners, you're at the mercy of some of this stuff, which is it's just going down the wrong rabbit hole as far as I'm concerned.
No, I'm sure they would agree with you. Talking with Dr. Jeff Pierce here, our Woodward Sports Injury Insider, discussing the Kerry Carpenter situation. What about this? Honolulu BS. Dr. Pierce, will his back ever heal while he's literally carrying the entire team on his back? I blame Torque and Javi. What's their role? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
He can't get hurt from carrying the team on his back, right? Because he was.
I know he's trying to be facetious, but, indirectly, yeah. You put more stress on yourself. You play more.
That's a good point.
Are you more uptight? Is your body relaxed? Are you in a rhythm? Do you feel like, yeah, I do have to carry the team. I do have to play through something. This thing didn't happen overnight. This might have been lingering for a couple of days because these guys are tough. I got some backache, some strain, things like that. There's probably a lot more to the story when you start taking the history of it. But yeah, as far as carrying the rest of the team, yeah, the Tigers are a little bit unique that way, but
a little light offensive.
But it does put more strain on your body and more, I know he's trying to be funny, but yes, in the big picture,
there is something to it. Okay.
There is something to it. It depends on what mentality is. If he's like, and he's a nice kid. The kid's religious. He's, thanking God all the time. And
he's a big Woodward guy, too, as a matter of fact.
He's a big Woodward guy, too, so shout out. But, I think he is that type to not say, that's his job, this is my job. I think he does, I'm going to do everything I can to let this team win. So he probably does put a little bit more on his back. So that's, trying to be funny and punful, but punful, is that a word?
I don't think so. I think you just made it up.
We're going to coin that for being punful.
Is it tougher because it's baseball, too? In that you literally play every single day, where even if DMAC, like for you with hockey, like you get a day, 2 days, sometimes 3 days, but this piles on top of each other, game by game by game. And again, going back to Honolulu's comment on there, he was shouldering the load, and we saw it last night. Boom, they scored 2 runs. Now, luckily they won. But does it change? I don't want to say does it change recovery, because the recovery is the recovery, but does it change the perspective, I guess, because you are playing every single day?
Well, yeah, that absolutely, because it's rotations. We talk about pure injuries. We talk about rotation. 26-year-olds, he should have enough rotation. Something happened, but his recovery is going to be his recovery. He's not coming back prematurely. He's going to have imaging. There's ways to treat him to advance it, but still, there's physiology of healing. We always talk about the 6 month is the bone pure healing. There is processes, there is ligaments, there is, small nerves and discs when you're talking the lumbar region, which can affect his hip, his back, his mechanics, right? So we talked about, even Brady brought up, what about his rotation when you're swinging? What's that going to do? That's a big deal because it's a rotational sport. For you to swing, it's a rotational sport. In golf or swimming, you can kind of do a little bit more of a leg roll where the segments kind of move together. But for batting, for turning on the ball and exploding, that's an explosive moment, and the lumbar is a big part of that.
DMAC, I'm terrified, man. For real.
Yeah, I mean it's not optimal. You lose your best hitter, and then your 1-1 goes down, and you are what you are. But I think the biggest thing though is not to rush him back, right, Doc? I mean, with this, give him as much time as he needs. Because is this one thing that if he pushes it could hinder him throughout?
Oh yeah.
Like down the road, it could be one of these nagging injuries.
Yeah, I mean, he's young enough. He'll build up the muscle around it. He'll be a, as good or a better player. Like I always say, some of these injuries, we see the glass half full that he's going to be a better, more well-rounded player. This is in our wheelhouse. We'd love to put our 2 cents in on this, with some of the stuff that's being done from the biologics.
And that's one of the questions that somebody has. And again, you're not doing it, so you don't know. But kind of like a guesstimate of Alan W. says, Dr. Pierce, could you give a possible timeline for how long maybe he could be out with this injury? You don't know the degree, so that's kind of a tough ask. But at the same time, I'm not getting a good feeling here.
Yeah, this isn't a 1 to 2 week thing. If it's a pure stress fracture that has any involvement in the major part of the bone, then it's no less than 2 weeks.
Do we have another example of somebody who's had this in the past? Maybe a baseball player that's gone through this.
Yeah,
I don't remember. Like, this is not the baseball injury that it's like, wait, because I'm thinking around, and I'm sure that Jesus, if you looked, online and stuff like this, but this is one. Is this like sort of an injury in baseball and whatever that as a doctor you're like the alarm goes off a little bit more? Like, we got to pay more special attention to this because it is a little bit different.
Well, you remember Cronwell?
Yeah.
Remember Cronwell had those compression fractures in his spine, and I got all upset after the second one. And I'm like, the first one he had a terrible injury. He got checked and taken out with trauma. The second one was a little bit weird. So then we pushed heavily for bone density scans. We wanted to find out that he didn't have any pathology behind it, because you shouldn't be fracturing at 26 years old without trauma. So I don't want to open that can of worms, but then we did with Cronwell. We found out he was, I can't remember, I think he was just slightly deficient. We were overreading it, but it was just 2 bad incidences. But he was out for, he was out for a long period of time. But those were compression fractures. This is a stress fracture, which I'm hoping is just in the right spot. There's the foramen, there's the joint basically, where it hooks together, where it's most common, where you see it, where versus like the spinous process, like everything kind of, we should have some anatomy here, but maybe I'll bring it for next week.
You have one of those skeletons like back in school?
I do. We've actually used it on the show before, but we'll have to have one here standard these days.
Jesus did some great research. Devin Williams, the closer for the Milwaukee Brewers, has been out 3 months with a back stress fracture. Now that's a pitch or 2 rotation. So I mean, he
throws a most devastating sweeper pitch I've ever seen in my life.
So right, so
Yeah.
Like, is this, and it's almost like, do we put it in the back burner that, hey, this is the new Tommy John? Is it? Are we
it's
the stress fracture?
No, we're not there yet. But Dr.
No,
Pierce,
but it is. It's a time of healing, and you can't push it. He's got to feel strong. One, he's got to heal. Two, he's got to get back, build up the muscle around it. He's got to get back into baseball shape. So this is not. If it's one of these other things, other than like a little stress fracture after a spinous process or the transverse process, which is all the anatomy stuff, then we're more concerned. If it's in the anatomy where the joint is, then we're much more concerned. It's going to be more timing.
Oh, Dr. Pierce, appreciate your time every week,
Doc.
my friend. Wish it was under better pretenses this time.
Yeah, no goofing around today. Huh?
No, absolutely. Appreciate the time with our Woodward Sports Injury Insider, Dr. Jeff Pierce, Medical Director of the Michigan Sports and Spine Center. Catch him here every Tuesday on Big D Energy, every Thursday with Ermanni and Edwards. And he's brought to you by MRI of Southfield. Go to MRIofSouthfield.com. The most advanced imaging and maximum patient comfort for over 20 years.